here in New York and a crackdown tied up in court. A judge blocking President Trump from revoking legal status for more than 500,000 migrants. President Biden now brought them in starting in 2002 as part of a mass parole program. Republicans say it is riddled with fraud, and that is where we begin on a Tuesday. Morning, everybody. I'm Bill Hemmer. Let's get back after it today. We shall.
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. It's incredible just to hear you say that about all of these things happening during the Biden years that the Trump administration is still trying to deal with, and there's so many legal issues. Despite that setback that Bill just described, President Trump is digging in on deportations. He talked about it yesterday during a visit by the president of El Salvador. Now, that country has already accepted hundreds of deportees into its high-security mega prison. President Trump floated the idea of sending American criminals there, too.
If it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people.
More on that in a moment. Meanwhile, you got this. A Maryland jury finding an illegal immigrant guilty in the rape and murder of Rachel Moore in a high-profile case that was hotly contested during the campaign of 2024. President Trump accusing the media of ignoring that case in Maryland.
We have Team Fox coverage. Griff Jenkins has more on the Rachel Moore conviction. Jonathan Turley is on deck. But first, let's get to Jackie Heinrich. She is at the White House this morning. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Dana. Expect a swift appeal and more criticism of lower court judges blocking the president's executive authority through nationwide injunctions. One White House official already calling this ruling pure lawless tyranny. Former President Biden created the CHNV parole program through his executive authority, and now this judge is telling President Trump he can't use his same authority to undo it and remove or revoke the status of 500,000 people who entered through it. The CHNV humanitarian parole program started flying people in 2023 from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. It was paused after widespread fraud was discovered, and several recipients were also arrested for high-profile crimes. Meantime, deportation plans are ramping up. President Trump saying yesterday his administration is studying the laws to potentially deport what he called homegrown criminals, including American citizens. AG Pam Bondi saying this.
Is that legal to do? Is that something you're allowed to do?
Well, Jesse, these are Americans who he is saying who have committed the most heinous crimes. These people need to be locked up as long as they can, as long as the law allows. We're not going to let them go anywhere. And if we have to build more prisons in our country, we will do it.
The White House is refusing to bring back an illegal immigrant who had been living in Maryland. Officials conceded he was deported because of an administrative error, but they allege he has ties to MS-13. In 2019, a U.S. court granted Kilmar Abrego Garcia protection from removal to El Salvador, citing danger that he would face there. Last week, the Supreme Court ruled the White House must facilitate his return. The administration interpreted that only to mean they must accept him if El Salvador sends him back, which President Bukele says isn't happening.
Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
Now, Stephen Miller said yesterday on this program that the DOJ lawyer who conceded that Garcia was deported by mistake has been fired. Miller maintaining that his deportation was no mistake. However, the Solicitor General and also an ICE official both also affirmed that the deportation was an error in a Supreme Court filing and also a sworn declaration, Bill. And Dana.
All right. Thank you so much, Jackie. Great to have you on the show to kick us off.
We bring in Jonathan Turley to make sense of all this. Sir, good morning to you. Let's start with the executive order from 2022 on behalf of Joe Biden. So you had 530,000 immigrants from Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba. I'm missing one more. Nicaragua. Yeah, okay. So that was the four countries. Here's what the judge said, okay? The termination of parole processes is hereby stayed pending further court order insofar as it revokes without case-by-case review, that's important, the previously granted parole and work authorization issued to non-citizens parole. Do we have to go case-by-case? 530,000? Is that the due process this judge is asking for?
Well, the irony, of course, is that if they ever tried to go case by case, it would run out the time on a 2-year parole, which was granted under this program. So these individuals are parolees. They don't have a special immigration status other than they're allowed to be here for just 2 years. If you do an individual determination, that clock will likely run out. It'll probably run out during the appellate process. So the administration really wants to fast track this on appeal. And what they're saying is, look, Joe Biden created this out of executive authority, and we have stopped it out of executive authority. We believe that it's riddled with fraud and that it's harmful to the government's interests. And this court has said, no, these people are here now, and you have to make this individual determination. It's a very novel question. I would not call this opinion an exercise of judicial tyranny, but there are good faith reasons here why the administration is saying that they have the authority to do this.
And this will likely go to the Supreme Court as well, I'm assuming?
Yes, and you know, the administration is likely to try to get there as fast as possible. But you know, part of the problem here for the administration is that if you allow the 2 years to run out and these people haven't applied for legal status and they stay here, they go into the usual formal process for deportation. And we all know that a lot of people don't even get trial dates for 8 years. And so they're saying that one of the reasons they wanted to cut this short is because under the existing program, they can expedite deportation. If they're here after that runs, they're afraid that they're going to go into the usual system,
right.
And we've got another 500,000 people that are hard to remove.
So let me then ask you about this El Salvador migrant. He is the subject of much discussion. He was living in Maryland. He was deported. He is in El Salvador prison. There are different takes from the administration, who says that this was a big win in the Supreme Court. I want to have you listen to Secretary of State Marco Rubio about this yesterday.
I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
So the White House yesterday said that this was a 9-0 win for them in the Supreme Court. Here's what the Supreme Court order said. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. How do you see this, sir?
Well, you know, after the opinion ran, I did a column saying that the media was getting it wrong. They were saying that the Supreme Court had ordered his return. That's simply not true. In fact, I sort of mocked the opinion. I don't know what a writ of facilitation is. I don't know what it means to facilitate. And the administration is really pouring into that ambiguity and saying, look, if they bring him to our doorstep, we understand we have to open the door. And the El Salvadoran president said he isn't going anywhere. Now, remember, this is an El Salvadorian citizen in an El Salvadorian prison. So the only way to execute his return would be to effectively kidnap him against the will of El Salvador. That's not going to happen. But this judge is not going to be happy. But the reason they got a 9-0 ruling is I'm not too sure what the ruling meant. I mean, 9 justices said you really need to facilitate this, and they left it there.
Okay, so then what next?
Well, what next is this judge is going to probably deal with the fact that the president just said we're really not asking or doing anything to facilitate a return. Mm-hmm. The court's likely to strongly disagree with that interpretation. But the enforcement mechanism here is the problem. He is outside the country. He is a foreign citizen. He's in a foreign prison.
Right.
There's not much that a judge can do except possibly look at a contempt aspect. But the Supreme Court doesn't even give a good basis for that. What constitutes facilitation? They don't say.
Okay. Professor, we will leave it there with a question mark. How about that? Thank you, sir. We'll talk again. Jonathan
How
Turley.
about that? Yeah.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.